Hello, Phantom Fam. Welcome back to another episode of Wading into the Void. And today we have a very, very special guest with us. We have Nyko back on the podcast. We are very excited. Yes. So without further ado, cue intro and let's go wading into the void.
All right. So before we kind of get into any conversations, do we want to just go straight into Oracle and Tarot?
Sure.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
See what Spirit has to say for me today.
Yeah. All right. So we are starting with I feel like I wanted to do the new one that I got, but it's downstairs and I'm kind of lazy. So maybe next episode. But we're going to go back to the Mausolea Oracle of Souls because I love this deck so much. It is illustrated by Jason Engel with text by Rabbit Stoddard and additional writing by Jason Engel. So this deck is amazing. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous. I love it. So let's start shuffling. And I don't know if somebody wants to tell me when to stop or whatever. Doesn't matter.
Nyko gets to.
All right.
This is for her today.
Okay, 2 more times, they said.
1, 2, or
Sure.
shuffle full.
I think we're good now.
Okay.
I love okay.
Are you kidding me? I think this is the exact same card we got last time. Is this the exact same card we got last time, Katie?
I think it is.
Do we want to read it again?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right.
Was it the same one you got for me last time?
No, it's like literally one of our last episodes. We did this deck and pulled this exact same card, and I just shuffled it like twice through.
It's okay. Maybe it's meant for me today.
All right.
Yes.
What's really cool about this deck is I think they have it in like 5 different languages, like the book. So basically anybody can get this deck and be able to read what it has to say.
We love an accessible queen.
So we got Aaron, Arawn. He is the master of the Great Hunt, and he represents authority, the hunt, and natural balance. Aaron directs one to follow one's nature, rather than attempting to orchestrate others in pursuit of the most important quarry of all. So I guess it's basically just saying, follow your natural intuition, follow, exactly how you feel in your heart, rather than trying to demonstrate who you are to appeal to others. Like, don't change the way that you are. Continue being the same that you already have been. I don't know. That's my best guess.
I like it. I feel like it really resonates with me, as a spiritual life coach, because, that's kind of what I do, help people balance out their life and connect back to their intuition more, like their authenticity. So I like that.
And you're being your 100% authentic self while doing so.
Yeah.
So you're not straying just to fit in a path to have them hear what they want to hear.
Yeah, exactly.
So the tarot deck that we're using for today, I think we've only used this deck like once, or maybe twice. We have the Mystical Dream Tarot by Janet Pidolato.
Cute. Okay.
Pretty cool name. So let's start shuffling, and we'll just let me know when to stop.
Stop.
All right. Ooh. This looks interesting. I don't know how this book is set up. Oh, here we go. Perfect. So we got this card upright, so I don't have to read the reversed meaning.
Show us the card.
Oh
Show
yeah,
us
here you
the
go.
card.
So we got the Four of Swords. It's
Oh,
kind of like this man standing in front of a mountain, but also what he's standing on is kind of a natural bridge
Yeah.
over some kind of a canal or a river. It's very interesting. It looks like there's electricity like coming all the way down to the bottom, and there's like a tiny little cave down there. I don't even know. It's a very interesting picture. So this card basically says, time to go within, to a place of isolation, withdraw, retreat. Visionary, mystical, or near-death experiences lead to new perceptions. Illness awaits healing. Silence and solitude. Meditation. The lonely road beyond sorrow. So I guess it's basically saying, like, this is your time to reflect and heal and, like, await that inner light of vision, and healing will come, but it's within its own time. So
yeah. I like that.
Kind of perfect, because that's pretty much exactly your brand when you lead people into their Akashic records,
yeah.
is
Yeah.
getting those stories and healing from them. So
Yeah. And also, I
Exactly.
feel that's a confirmation for me because a month from today, I'm going on vacation and I'm taking off 10 weeks with my kids to just isolate and just be a mom. And it's nice to step away from spiritual side of things and just be a human sometimes. And I feel like I've been doing a lot of healing. So now I'm just going to go and do some rest and relaxation.
That's going to be awesome.
amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very exciting.
And also in my Akashic records, when I go in, it's kind of like in a cave behind a waterfall. And lots of times when I'm in there and I'm doing healing, I have like this big staff and I slam it in the ground and a bolt of lightning comes out. So it kind of looks like the card.
Yeah,
That's fun. I like
that's really
that.
cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was our tarot and oracle for today. I'm glad it resonated with you. And I'm excited to go forward into this episode.
Yes. Before we do that, I know we've had Nyko on the podcast before, but it has been a hot minute, or for any new listeners who haven't gone back to listen to any of the older episodes. Nyko, would you mind introducing yourself, kind of what you do, just like a quick little sell yourself to all the listeners?
Yeah, so I guess mostly I'm a spiritual life coach, and I kind of help people balance out, like we were saying earlier, like living in our practical life, but still getting through our spiritual awakenings. And I use the Akashic records as a tool to help my clients. And so that's just the archives of your soul. So I just guide you through a hypnosis meditation. I've worked with Kate and Nat before. And that was really lovely. I think it was actually a year ago, like when I was here last time, I think so, right after I worked with you.
Probably, yeah.
I'm looking at our
Awesome.
episodes. Yeah. June 9th was when we posted
almost
this. So almost
exactly.
exactly a year. Yep.
That's funny.
Yeah.
So for anyone that would like to go back and listen to that episode, it's very interesting, and it's going to be completely different from what we're covering here today.
Yes.
So that is episode 56.
Yeah.
So
And
go
that
give it a
talks a
listen.
lot. That one talks a lot more about the Akashic records and what I do, but also I am a medium and I also work with the living, but I also really love working with the dead. I think that's what we're focusing on today, right?
Yes.
The dead.
Yeah.
So we're very excited to have you back on.
Yes.
And I'm super excited to get into today's episode just because, like we mentioned, it's going to be completely different. I don't think we've had anyone. Well, we had Vinny on to kind of discuss like his methodology of how he does it. And that episode was just a couple before Nyko's on the last time. So go give that a listen if you want to hear more about like the scientific side of what we're going to talk about today. But we are going to be discussing paranormal investigations and how Nyko uses her abilities to connect with spirit on these, excursions out with the dead, if we will.
Yes. For those of you who have been following us in the past, I guess, month or two, we've been trying to get more into the ghost hunting aspect, the investigations and stuff like that. I mean, obviously things come up and things don't happen, or they do, who knows. But we've gone on a couple investigations. And the last time we were talking to Nyko, she brought up that she had been on some of these crazy investigations.
Yes.
We were like, oh my gosh, we totally need to talk about these because this is amazing. So I believe if we want to pivot, and Nyko, you want to tell us about some of your favorite investigations, maybe some of the scariest ones, or, some of the more really interesting things that you've done with your abilities.
Yeah. Okay, well, where do I want to start? Maybe at the beginning, because I love doing this now, but if you would have asked me even 6 years ago, I would have been like, no thanks, I'm not going to be doing that. I've been able to see, hear, feel the spiritual world since I was very young. So a lot of times I would try to push it away, or I wasn't really an understanding of what was happening. And I would always see spirits. And like I said, I tried to push them away. But I find sometimes when something is for you, and no matter how much you try to push it away, it keeps slapping you in the face. So suddenly I was like, maybe I'm supposed to be helping them in some way. And especially after a lot of, I don't know if you guys, I think in the States also, you guys had residential schools dug up, with the Indigenous. And so where I live in Alberta, there's a lot of Indigenous culture here. And so not good stuff has happened to the Indigenous here. And so what I noticed was after a traumatic experience, even 8 years ago, I started seeing more and more and more spirits, and most of them were Indigenous. And so I was thinking, maybe I'm meant to help them because this is such a sad situation, what happened. And maybe parts of them are stuck here and need some releasing and some help. So then I joined a paranormal team. I felt called to after so many spirits were coming. And then, so I've been working with the paranormal team for 4 years now, I think so. And so I'm the psychic medium, and it's really cool because I finally have got to use equipment. My whole life before that, I know I could see and hear them, but I never had proof. But I wasn't always open to be like, hey guys, your dead grandma wants me to tell you the grocery line at the grocery store that you forgot butter.
Right. So you didn't want to go full Teresa Caputo on everyone in Alberta, Canada.
The Long Island medium.
Yeah, right? So it's like, and you never know what people think. So being a part of the team kind of helped me even build my confidence more, because now we have equipment that can also hear, and it's signaling when it goes off. And so I love that my teammate and she actually had a near-death experience. I talk about it in one of my podcast episodes, and she was on the other side for a bit and came back. And so then she became really interested in the paranormal. So kind of how her and I do things is that, so we work it's a nonprofit organization, and we usually do private homes. People call when they have something going on in the home, and usually it's not the home, it's the person. It's like, you're just sensitive to spirit, it's not the house. Because sometimes we go to people's houses and they keep moving, and I had to finally tell the lady, it's not the house, it's you. Sorry, but it's you, not the house. And so we kind of just help people understand what's happening about the spirit world. And usually the first thing they always say is, I'm not crazy, I'm not schizophrenic, right? And so I'm like, I totally get you, because I don't think you're on drugs, I believe you. And
you're
so
preaching to the choir, hon. We get it.
Right. And so usually that's what they say when we get there. And I like that I'm able to confirm to them, you're not nuts, I believe you. And then I think sometimes someone just honestly needs someone to validate, okay, maybe I am not crazy, and this stuff's happening. So, and then usually what we do when we get there, so I don't like to know anything, no pun intended, I like to go in blind. And then my partner, she'll research everything and she'll know everything. So
That's familiar.
yeah. And so when I go in, I just like to walk around first as I'm going in and just see what wants to talk to me, because sometimes an object might be holding energy or whatever, right? So I'll just check everything out. And so when we go to these private homes, usually it's just like people in the neighborhood walking by. It's not really connected to the home or anything. And so most of the time, also when we go, it's like when people live in multiple houses that are together, like duplexes, and they're just walking through the walls, or in apartment buildings. And so lots of time, most of the time, we get called to a very old ghetto part of the city.
Love it.
That's where a lot of the action is at. And honestly, it's a lot of indigenous spirits. But so sometimes, most of the time, the people that we go and help, they have died like in a traumatic way, like overdose, or one of my favorite recent ones I'll talk about, we went to, it was this lady was just having stuff going off in her home, and we had been to her daughter's house before, and she's kind of aware of spirits, so she just wanted us to investigate it. She didn't think it was harmful. And when we got there, right away I could see something like in a closet, because I do a little meditation before I get there to tap into the energy. And so when I got there, there was a man. I could feel that there was a man in the room, but sometimes it takes a little bit for the spirits to come out. So my friend, who had the near-death experience, is really good at coaxing them out, because she shows them compassion and empathy and talks about how she had been to the other side. And then sometimes it might take like an hour before they'll come out and talk to us. And so this man finally came out and talked to us, and he told us that he was homeless and he died in the streets actually a year before. So here in the city I live, it gets to be minus 50 degrees Celsius in wintertime. So for the homeless population, that's not, it's really hard. And so he had said he had been on the streets for years, but he told us a year prior to him dying, or a few months prior, he had gotten robbed and stabbed, and someone stole all of his stuff. So he had lost his winter gear, and he had froze to death. And this spirit actually didn't even realize he was dead. He fell asleep in the snow and the ice, and after he fell asleep, he like just was wandering around here in the area, and he came to this lady's home to stay because he was in the nearby neighborhood. But sometimes spirits, what I'm finding is they like to stay in homes where they feel good vibes and good energy, and especially if they know that you can sense them. And so he was in this lady's closet because she had so much clothes, and he had froze to death. So that's why he had found this lady and was staying here in this closet. And so I like the way that me and my teammate work, because what happens is the spirit kind of steps into my body, and all of a sudden I can see, hear, feel, smell all of their whole life story. So it's like I'm accessing their Akashic records, their soul's archives. And then my teammate, she is interviewing me or questioning me, and I'm speaking, and then the equipment will go off and confirm all of the things that I'm saying. And so that's how we know kind of where to lead the conversation, because we'll get it. If I'm right, if what I'm saying is right, it'll start going off, right? And so it's in the spirits, like in my body. So and I can even feel all of the injuries they had throughout their lifetime. And so what I do is I'm kind of helping them clear their bodies. And a lot of times what happens is, if you die from a negative experience, so this is what my spirit guides have showed me, is that, we all have this higher consciousness, and we're all a part of the universe. We're all a collective. And then a piece of us wants to come and have a human experience. So a piece of our soul splits off, and we come down here and we have this human experience. But now, if you know how sometimes if something bad happens to you and you keep getting that repeated memory, it's the same thing. Like the spirit will if it dies in a negative way, that little piece of their soul might get kind of stuck a little bit in the timeline. Now, it's never stuck. You can always move over. But a lot of these spirits, especially him, once we got talking to him, we were telling him, you know, like, you can move over. He felt so shameful, like he didn't belong in a more peaceful place because he had a lot of bad things. And he was also Indigenous. So he had a lot of things happening to him in his life that he didn't feel he should get to move over. Yeah, so then we helped him move over, and this is a really cool thing. What always happens every time we let a spirit move over is we feel a big gust of wind. So it's like this big angelic being comes down, and the wings just go like I know you can't see it, but it's like the wings just picks up the spirit and it floats off, and we feel the gust of wind. So with this particular spirit, the thing that I really like about this was I gave an opportunity for he showed me a long line of his ancestors that had been through similar life as him, a lot of trauma. And so what happened, I gave the intention that when I'm sending him over to where the place he's meant to go next, any ancestors that's meant to go with him will follow along. And then all of a sudden, like, the wind started picking up. Like, you could feel the gust of wind for every time another soul was stepping through with him. So that's sort of what the team and I try to do, is help them release the shame and whatever was helping or the trauma that's kind of bounding them, that piece of them here to the earth, and then clearing it and moving it over. And this is what my spirit guide showed me, is that a lot of spirits that die in a negative way, and now some people might call it purgatory or whatever, but so just that energy is stuck here. And so my team and I are kind of helping that stagnant energy to move on to the next place. Kind of like when I bring you through your Akashic records in your past lives, I help you reclaim a piece of yourself. So what I'm doing is sending that piece back to the other person.
Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the style, how we do it. And then we work that way with every spirit, but I can get into some different ones that we've done. Lately, what we've been doing is, so there's a street downtown. It's probably like in the 1800s, there was a gold rush up north. And so this city was used, a lot of people, as soon as they got the train from going from the East Coast to the West Coast, a lot of people would stop here in this city to go further up north to where the gold mines and stuff was in the gold rush. There was a lot of hotels on the street, and it would have like bars and brothels and stuff in them, and people would just stop here on the way. So a lot of those old hotels are still on that street, like the original buildings. And so we went on this haunted ghost tour one time, and while we were there at this old pub, so this pub used to be, before it was a pub on the land, back in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s, I think, it was funeral home. And a lot of people used to get cremated there, and nobody would buy the land for a while. And this lady came from Ireland.
That is quite the change. Okay.
And so this lady came from Ireland. You know, everybody was coming here for the gold rush. And her parents owned a pub in Ireland. So she created an exact replica of the pub here. And it's still here today. And so when we were doing the ghost tour, as I said, I can walk around and feel the energy of stuff. So I could feel these big wooden Jameson whiskey bottles and barrels. And I'm like, oh, these were on a boat. Like, they came on a boat, and they're like, yeah, they're actually original from Ireland. They came across on the boat and then across on the train. And so we picked up a lot of spirit energy while we were on this ghost tour at this pub. So what we started doing was just going back and having lunch there and bringing our equipment and just offering for any spirits that wanted to come talk to us to come in there. And so we've been there a number of times now, and we've had so many different spirits that will come, but not only just that pub, but there's different like hotels and buildings all on that street. So we started not only going from that pub, but going to different buildings
Mhm.
on the street and just sitting and letting the spirits come to us if they want to come and talk to us. And so last week when we went there, this was so wild. So before I even get there, on the way, I start feeling symptoms. Like I might start coughing.
Yeah.
I might start, like, my neck was hurting. And last week I started saying all this vulgar stuff. Like, do you mind if I say it?
No, go for it.
It was like, you whore, you bitch, you, like this girl was getting called down to the dirt. But it seems like it was from a long time ago. Like it wasn't words I would normally use. And I kept feeling like my head was something was happening. Like my head popped off. I don't know. I was like, this is weird.
Jeez, yep.
And my teammate was like, well, do you want me to tell you what happened? Because she did some research. And I was like, no. I'm like, don't tell me yet. Don't tell me yet. But this is driving to the location.
Oh,
right?
wow.
And so this is like in an old hotel here we were going to, and it has like a restaurant and tavern in the bottom of this one as well. So when we get there, I start feeling like so sick, couldn't eat my food or anything. And come to find out that I start talking to this lady, and she had died. She had been murdered there back in the 80s. And so they had found all of her body parts except for her head.
Oh my God.
Shit. That's insane.
And I kept saying to my teammate, like, I kind of feel like something's going on with my head. I even felt like my neck cracking. And I was like, something's going on with my head. And so that was wild.
That is insane. Yeah.
And then another lady came through. No, this wasn't a lady. This was a young man that came through and told us that he had been murdered a few years back. And I even said his name. I could feel that he was being stabbed in the stomach. I could feel he died before the ambulance got here. I even felt me falling to the ground on the concrete and seeing the ambulance arrive. But then I passed on before the ambulance got here.
Yep.
And so we helped those spirits move over. And it seemed like every single time we would help a spirit to move over to the next place where they need to be, another one would come through and another one would come through. And I was thinking, like, dang, how many spirits are there here, guys? Like, how many is here? And then we just said, if there's any more spirits here today that would like to move over. And before we move them over, like I said, I kind of do like a heal. I'm like a therapist for the dead. Like, I kind of validate their story. They tell me what happened to them, if they've had any injuries, and I kind of help them because I do a lot of shamanic healing in my sessions with people too. So I help them clear out their body and, like I said, send that soul piece back. And then I said, if there's any more spirits in here that want to leave today, just make the light go off, like, and just walk through this little door that I had made. And I heard amen, 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 amen 13 times. So, and the light went off. So 13 more people went behind this person. Okay.
Oh, wow.
So after that happened, the light starts going off again. There was still one more there. And we were like, how come you didn't go through? So this guy was a murderer.
Oh,
well, that makes sense.
Hold up.
And so he didn't feel like it was okay for him to walk through like the rest of the people. And so then I had to, like, do this therapy session with this guy because he had a drinking problem, and he would show me that what would happen is he would go out and drink a lot, and then he'd go home the next day, and, like, his knuckles and everything would be, so I guess he would get, like, blackout drunk and not even realize what he was doing. And so he felt a lot of guilt and shame. He ended up dying, I think. I can't remember why he said he ended up dying, but I had to work with him to be like, you know, you had a lot of anger, you had a lot of things, you still deserve to move on to the next place, wherever you're meant to go to. You don't need to wander around here. And so, yeah, that was just one of the days that we went. So that was the first day, and we were like, I think we need to start coming back here more. So when we left that building that day, we walked up the street to a coffee shop to get a coffee, and the thing started going off again. And we're just literally up the street. from the other hotel that we were. And so I'm like, I think they're following us. Like, I think that the spirits on the street were following us. And this lady came and I could see her full vision, not just like an apparition. She looks like me and you. She had all these scars on her face and she didn't look good. And I was just like trying to get her story. And come to find out, she died like 100 years ago, and she used to work at a brothel across the street. And she did not want me calling her a sex worker. Instead, she was an entertainer. But she caught syphilis, she told me. And that was like the scars and everything on her. And she had died of syphilis. And we looked it up. There was actually a syphilis outbreak in the city at that time frame where she said she died, and they didn't find a cure for it until the 1930s. There was actually such a, I guess because it was such a hot spot with the hotels, all of a sudden there was a lot of brothels and stuff, right?
Yeah.
Surprise.
Right? So that was just the one day. All of that stuff happened in the one day. And so we've been going back since and just sitting and waiting for the spirits to come. And then when we went on Wednesday, I was telling Nat about this on the call. This one was really cool, but my audio didn't work. So we recorded the whole thing and got home and there was absolutely no audio. But this lady that came through, and this is wild, when a lot of people die. I know we talked a lot about religious stuff in the podcast episode you guys did with me, and a lot of these spirits that we talked to, like, so going back to the pub that used to be the place where people got cremated, when we went there, this man came forward first, and we asked them, like, were you here? Like, are you just, a lot of them are just lingering on the street. Like I said, there's so many buildings close by that they're just walking through. And so this man, I kept feeling, I couldn't breathe. Like I was coughing, my lungs, something to do with his lungs. And I could see that his lungs were black. And I was like, black lung? Did you die from like a black lung or something like that? And I had never heard of that. And we looked it up, and it was people in the coal mines, because there was coal mines also, not just the gold mines back then. And so he worked in a coal mine, and they show me a lot of I can see their visions and their memories, like, because I can see into their Akashic records. I was like feeling everything that he was feeling. And it's funny because he laughed and he was like, how can you hear what I'm saying? Because now it's a pub, and he goes to the pub a lot and just sits to the tables and listens to what everybody's saying. But he's like, no one else could ever hear and see me before. How come you hear me and see me? And so he was telling us that he was a very religious guy, and he thought that he was in hell, or that he was stuck in purgatory this whole time, because he died in a coal mining accident and he got cremated, and it was against his religion. But no one ever came to collect his body because he never really had any family. And what happened with him was that there was never a proper burial or anything. He just died in this mining accident and was brought here to be cremated. And he just was kind of left, like his ashes were just dumped in a spot. And he felt,
that's so sad.
Yeah.
So, and then after that, at that same pub, another lady came to us, and she was like 36 years old, and it's really cool because she had a super thick, strong Irish accent. And I was trying to translate what she was saying, but it was very like it was hard for me to translate it to the Irish accent, you know? And so she kept saying, like, instead of yeah, she would be like, I. And so when she was showing me memories of, she was a young girl and what happened to her, like I said, a lot of them have died in a traumatic way. So what happened to her, she told me, so she had died like 80 years ago, and she wasn't connected to the pub or the cremation place, but she had died, and there was never a proper burial or anything that had happened for her either. So she thought she was also in purgatory and trapped here for 80 years because of her religion. So she had told me when she was a young girl that she she got impregnated by a man when she was a young 13, 14-year-old girl, and it was against her will, but she didn't want to have the baby. And because her parents were Catholic, she wasn't allowed to get an abortion. So she did something to herself to get rid of the baby, and then her family disowned her. Yeah. And so she became estranged from her family, and then she ended up coming all the way to Canada. She got on a boat and then ended up here in Western Canada. And she told me she was 36 when she died, and a man had taken advantage of her again and killed her, and her body had just gotten left somewhere on the land. And she thought that because of their religion, they're like, oh, well, I don't get to move over to a more peaceful place. So,
it is very interesting to hear that those thought processes and things based on your religious views in life do actually carry over and affect how these people.
Well, if you think about it, they're just trying to understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
So of course they're going to be like, oh, well, maybe I'm here because of my religion. And maybe that could be their holdup. Like, I can't move on because I wasn't given a proper burial, or because I wasn't acknowledged in a certain way, or something like that. So, I mean, of course they're going to think that way, because I think any human would probably think that way if they were put into some circumstance that they didn't understand, and they'll put their own thought process against it. So it makes sense.
It really does.
Right? Yeah. And I remember my teammate said to me, she's like, I can't, because she came back, she had her near-death experience, right? And then she got sent back. And so she was actually shown in her Akashic records that that's why she was sent back in this lifetime. Apparently she had been killing herself for repeated lifetimes. And this is the first lifetime that she didn't leave in that way, because she's meant to help souls that are stuck lingering here. And so she said to me in one of our very first investigations, she's like, I can't imagine me being stuck here and like seeing and hearing my family, but no one can see and hear me, and I can't move over. So it's cool how this all came together for her and I, and what we're doing, the way that we're doing things, what we're doing.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Do you ever get like spiritually exhausted after you go out on these like excursions? I mean, you're saying like so many spirits are coming through and you're having to heal them, like just when you're going out for like a little lunch date, you know? So how does that affect you in like the amount of time it takes you to recuperate before you go out and do it again?
Usually I like to prepare myself before and after. So before I know, most of the time it's intentional. I know that I'm going. Now sometimes they just pop in, but I'll just take the day to myself. Like for me, I'm very sensitive to energy. So I find being out in nature and grounding myself, and kind of, because I do live in the city, it's good. We have a river valley here. There's a big river that goes through the middle of the city. And our city actually has the most green space of any other city in North America. Like we still have all the old trees, like 100 years old.
Oh, I love that.
I'm grounding myself before I go. And then I also get a lot of healing after. So this is cool. I have a friend who does sound and energy healing. And every time I go on an investigation, she does energy healing on me. And she's able to actually feel in my body what I felt from the dead person and help me to release it. So I used to get a lot more drained, but now I'm more conscious and intentional with it. Now that I know, like that day when it was like 13 people plus all the other people, I came home and slept for the rest of the day. So I'm kind of more intentional of what else I'm going to have planned in my day. Right. So
yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready. We heard a lot about how you kind of approach these things, how you go into them, and then how you kind of deal and interact with spirit as you go through. The last time we had talked, you told us a very, very interesting story. And I think this will be the perfect way to wrap the episode and just to throw balls to the wall and give people like an insane experience of a paranormal investigation.
Okay.
So are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it. She's like, ah.
That's why I'm wondering. I just wanted to ease my way in, with the easier ones.
Mhm.
But which
Mhm.
specific one is it that you wanted me to talk about? Because there's
Katie, are you talking about the one with the kid
Yes.
that they're trying to solve the murder of?
Yes.
okay. Yes.
That
yes.
one.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, I'll give some details about that one, but I have to be a little bit discreet.
Yes.
Yeah.
Still, I won't say any names or anything.
Yeah,
So,
you don't have to use any names.
so one of our teammates, she works at this place where she met the spirits of a young boy who was murdered. And although there was it was a big going on around his case, which was about 20 years ago when he had passed away. No one was ever actually charged for his death, even though it was very scandalous and there was a lot of stuff going on. And so the spirit came to her and we're like, okay, we have to help him. So we went in to this place and before we even got there, this is wild, I started to do this weird thing with my hands. Like I would scrape my fingernails across the palm of my hands, and I couldn't figure out why I was doing that. And that's not something normally that I would normally do.
Yep.
And so I was like, okay, this must not be me. And this is another wild thing that happened before before we even got to the location. I picked up my teammate. On my way to pick up my teammate, this song came on the radio, and it was like it was actually the song that I had at my graduation. And this kid's mom hopped into my back seat and started telling me how she never got to see her son graduate. And showing me memories of when he was younger. Now, he wasn't living with her because he was a troubled kid and he had grew up in and out of the system and was getting into trouble and stuff. And so when I got to pick up my teammate, she says, before I told her his mom was in the car with me already, and his mom, obviously, she had passed already and her spirit was in the car. He said, oh, I just said a prayer and I invited his mom to come with us today. And I started laughing and I said, exactly how many minutes ago did you call him his mom? And then she said, and I specifically looked at the time to keep a note of it. And I laughed and said, oh, that's why she popped into my car. And I told her what happened. And so it was like, we felt like this was such a big mission because his mom had even came with us and was like, yeah, finally I'm going to get some answers and get some justice, because this spirit of this boy was stuck in this place where he died, where my other teammate works. And so we went into that place and sat down. And so this is one of the hardest ones that I've done. He stepped inside of my body, and suddenly listening back to what was happening, when we listened back to the recordings and I saw the videos, it was like I wasn't even there. I didn't really remember any of this stuff coming through me. So it was like I was totally removed and he was in my body.
Oh,
and
wow.
I was even saying things. My voice changed. I was saying mannerisms and different stuff that wasn't mine. And I could feel his aggression and his anger.
Yeah.
And so I was shown that they had killed him and tried to cover it up.
Yep.
And he showed us I figured out the reason why I was like going with my nails on the palms of my hands was because he was showing me this is what he would do. So he had a lot of anger problems and stuff, and like back in the early 2000s, it wasn't as known today, like about ADHD and all of this kind of stuff, and it wasn't given meds and proper stuff. So he had gotten into trouble and he wasn't given his proper medication. And so that was how he would calm himself down, was by digging his fingernails kind of in the palms of his hands. And so that's what I was feeling like, trying to calm myself down.
Yep.
And so I felt even how he died. I was shown the visual from his perspective and from the person who was who was killing him. And I can't really say any names of anything, but this is so wild. Like after we were able to help him with his injuries and different stuff that had happened to him, we called in these angels to come and help us to set his body free. And I'm sitting there, and at this point he had stepped out of my body. Okay. And we're all sitting we're in this little room, and there's no place for air. There's no air ducts. Like there's no electronics. Like we used our equipment in the room to see if there was anything going off first in the room. And then what happened was we called the archangel in, and we thought that it came to a different location because we were in a different spot than where he actually had passed over. And all of a sudden I see this big thing started walking through the wall, and I looked at my teammate and I was like, don't be alarmed, but there's something stepping through the wall behind you. And now this thing, like it literally just stepped through, and you could see in the video on my face, I was like, what the hell is that? And visually seeing it, it looked like what you might describe as like a transformer, like a big metal, like it had metal armor on it, and it was dark. Like you might think it was a demon, honestly, by looking at it, but I could feel by its vibration that it was such a high vibrational being. I fell to my knees and I started crying right away because I just felt so peaceful. That's why I was crying. And this thing stepped through, and I was like, holy shit, I think this is the angel. And you would never think it wasn't a human with wings. Like this looked like a big freaking transformer with a big sword. And it was like black and like fire.
Like a Dark Souls character.
Yeah. Kind of like what the card just looked like that you pulled for me.
Yeah.
Like a big freaky looking thing. But I could tell it had good vibes. Yeah, that's what it looked like.
That's
and I could
crazy.
tell it had good vibes though. And so this being helped us to, it's what they call it, like clearing out their light body, like helping them heal. And it's just removing the traumatic negative parts of them so that they can, the piece of them can move over to a happier, better place wherever they're meant to go to. And this being starts flapping its wings. Okay. And although my two teammates cannot see it, we all feel the wind in the room, and our papers start going flying. And we have this on video.
Oh my gosh.
And all the papers went flying. And all of a sudden, we feel like the same thing I just said, like the angels come in, and we feel like the breeze, like they're flying off with them. And then we all get, the same thing happens, like when they're passing over, we all get like this chill, like these goosebumps. And the angelic being just took him and flew off with him. And it was like, it was just so wild, the whole thing that happened. And so I'm not sure if there was something specific about that I told you about that you wanted me to add in about that story, but
no, I think you covered it. It was just the fact that you're on the way there, and all of these different pieces are just kind of coming together. And then that last experience you had towards the end where the spirit did finally cross over to wherever they were going was just so wild that it's like, oh my gosh. And you're pretty much complete out of body experience. You couldn't have any recollection of anything that had happened. It was just like, goddamn, you know?
Yeah.
And so
I think, oh, sorry, go ahead.
This young boy had been haunting this building where my teammate worked at, and she said that he's no longer there now.
Good.
Haunting it. So we had freed him. He had been lingering there for 20 years. And this is the wild thing. In the when we were helping him, he told us that right before he died that day, that he had met, and I talk about this, I think, in our episode, one of my spirit guides who helps me is Jesus. Even though I'm not religious, Jesus is one of my spirit guides that helps me help people cross over. And he said that Jesus told him 20 years ago, right before he died, don't worry, we're going to send somebody in to help you get a vengeance or whatever for your death and to help you. And so it's just wild. And his mom was there in the room the whole time. Like she came with us, and it was so cool.
That is really cool.
That is that's cool.
And that was essentially like a 20-year-old quote unquote cold case, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Could have potentially been some kind of cover up, but we're not going to talk about that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so that was incredibly intriguing when you first told us about it. And I'm really glad that we got to hear the ending of the story, because that is absolute insanity. I would have loved to have been able to see something like that. That is so cool.
Right.
And I'm really glad that he got that in the end. Like he got that piece and could move on. And I'm sure his mom probably was able to move on after that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some type of peace. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because we researched it and found out that, because I didn't know his mom had passed over yet, only my teammate, because she had done the research, and I didn't look up anything about this beforehand, but she had only recently passed away, like within the last few years. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Okay.
So she had went this whole time without
knowing. Yeah.
And so now I'm like, well, I know we know the truth, but will it really make a difference? You know what I mean? It's like all this, but since doing that case, I've been so interested and intrigued in getting into investigation of murders and stuff, unsolved and cold cases. Like, for example, that one lady, I felt her head come off, and so this man dismembered her body in a hotel room and dropped all of her limbs and body parts along the river. As I said, I live here in the river valley. The only thing that haven't been found is her head.
Yeah. And
I felt that. So I was like, imagine I'm just at the river valley one day and I find some random skull or something. So this is what I'm really trying to get into now, is I've been researching different unsolved murder cases in the area. And so we'll see what comes out of that.
Yeah. I mean, you said how much of a difference does it make in the end, but it seems like it made a world of difference to that spirit. And I guess in the end, that's what matters the most, is that he was able to find peace. So
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because even if he doesn't get his justice, I think he was able to move on in the end, and he got his peace, like you said, Katie. Yeah. So one way or another, it's still really important what you did.
Yeah. And that's why he was haunting that building, because he was holding so much anger, and he was there taunting the different people that was there, because he was trying to get back at people for his death. And now there hasn't been any issues happening at that building anymore.
Yeah. I also just really loved two things that you pointed out when you shared that story. The first is that Nat is like, although she's not religious, she is very much interested in the actual depiction of angels in the Bible.
I know, I'm like, Transformers, Dark Souls? What? They also have wings? What?
And how just insane they look. She loves that. And then the other part was, you were talking about ADHD and how this child hadn't gotten his like proper medication. So he would, to deal with his anger, to dig his fingernails into his palms. And that is something I did for years growing up. I went undiagnosed with my ADHD until I was about a sophomore in high school. So I learned all these different coping mechanisms as well. So you're like going through there, and I'm sitting here the whole time like, throwback, we're gonna keep digging into our palms. So I'm like, oh my gosh, this is insane.
Yeah, right. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with this cutting in and out today. It's like probably because we're talking about this, and it's like, no.
Yep. They're like, keep your secrets, God.
Yeah. But I remember what I was saying now. Like, it just goes to show, sometimes you think it might be something scary happening or haunting you. And maybe that spirit just died in a bad way, and it's taken its anger out on you, and you just need to be like, hey man, you gotta go to the light. You gotta let that shit go.
Yeah, you gotta let that shit go.
I
no
mean,
more grudges.
It's just like when the living people are taking out their anger on you, and it's like, hey, I think there's something that's repressed here. You might need to talk to somebody about this, or just deal with it, and figure it out.
Right? So it's literally like I'm just a therapist for the dead, and then
Yeah,
they just move over.
exactly. Yep.
Right? Yeah.
Soul
And I
Coach
just-
Nyko, PhD.
Oh gosh, yeah. And I feel like I like that card. I really love the card that you picked for me in the beginning too, because
Mm.
Spirit's telling me to like I kind of need to take a break a little bit to rest.
Mhm.
And then because like you said, it does get draining when I'm
Mhm.
talking, when I'm working a lot with these spirits and stuff, but
Yeah.
I'm being pushed more to work with the dead than I am the living lately. And so
Mhm.
I'm feeling like maybe that's why I need this big break, like you
Yeah.
were saying, to isolate and rest and relax. And I'm actually about to go back to my home province, the island of Newfoundland. It's
Mhm.
actually one of the oldest, the rock, it's like a galactic ancient, it's the oldest rock on the earth.
Mm.
The oldest piece of land on the earth. And so it's very haunted back there and it's very old.
Mm.
I'm about to go back there for a month. So we'll
I'm
have
sure
to-
you'll get plenty of good stories and everything.
Yeah. And I did a folklore course in university, and we
Mhm.
learned a lot about, because it's an island and it's literally the first island that you get to when you get to North America when you're crossing from Europe. So it was like a hot spot for pirates and explorers back in the day when they would be going
Yep.
to the Americas, or when they would be going even to the Caribbean. They would stop there because it's like a halfway mark instead of going all the way straight down. And so I think we
Interesting.
talked about that last time, how it went down the coast.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of tales, like even in the city or the town where I'm from, there's a big sandy beach, and apparently there's this tale of like buried pirate treasure, and people come there from all over the world to look for it.
Oh wow.
That's fun.
So this will be the first time I'm bringing my equipment, and I'm excited to go. But also at the same time, a lot of people back there are very religious. And so I'm like, well, I'm about to go home and be the talk of the town.
I love it. You're like, bring the drama and leave other people to deal with the consequences.
Right?
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I think with that story kind of told and disclosed, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your podcast? It's still fairly new. We've been enjoying it so far for sure. So why don't you let people know what it is, where they can find it, and a little bit about it.
Oh, yeah. So after working with so many people and sharing with them one-on-one about all my experience, everyone's always like, do you have a podcast? Do you have a podcast? And then I did this podcast last year. This was my very first time being on a podcast. I think it was with you guys, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
I think it was. Yeah.
And I was a little bit nervous, and I was like, I don't know about this. But anyway, from there, Kate and Nat pushed me. They're like, yeah, you should just do it. Just do it. And so finally I did in March, started my very own podcast. And it's called Who Walks Beside Me, because of course I've seen lots of spirits walking beside us. And so I talk a lot with people all over the world, different people that I've worked with, about their spiritual experiences, but it's more kind of motivational in how to still live a human life after coming into awareness of all of this stuff. And so we talk a lot also about the Akashic records and past lives and different stuff, kind of all things paranormal. So if you're into the paranormal and supernatural, it's just me interviewing lots of different people. And Kate and Nat was on with me in an episode, and we talked about the Bennington Triangle, which that was very interesting to learn all about that. So you can find me. I'm on Spotify and on YouTube, Who Walks Beside Me, and with Soul Coach Nyko, and it's NYKO. So I just like to add that in. Or so that's my podcast. I just ended season 1. So season 1 is more so, it's 12 episodes, and I'm just kind of, like I said, I'm interviewing everybody. And now the second season I'm recording right now, I'm getting into the paranormal stuff because I'm about to go home. So I'm going to be recording. It's going to be a lot more about the paranormal side of things that I do.
Well, we're very excited to listen to that when you finally release it and hear all about your experiences back home, for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me again.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much for
you.
coming back.
Everyone loved it the last time you were on. So
Yeah.
I'm sure they're really going to appreciate this different look at how you deal with your special abilities and how you help the dead kind of pass on. So, yes, thank you so much for coming on again. And I'm sure at some point we'll probably have you back on for a third time. So,
Right? I'll have to let you know what happens when I go back to the island.
Yeah,
Yes,
I'm really
for sure.
intrigued.
yes.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Alrighty.
Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.